Rebuilding an image is not about saying the right words. It's about whether people still believe you when you say anything at all. And that is where Meghan Markle's problem truly begins. Not with criticism, not with the media, not even with the royal family, but with something far more difficult to fix: trust fatigue. Because there was a time when Meghan's story felt powerful, emotional, and necessary. It felt like a woman breaking free from a rigid institution, reclaiming her voice, and exposing uncomfortable truths. People listened. People sympathized. People defended her fiercely. But something shifted, slowly at first, then all at once. The story stopped evolving. The message stayed the same, but the audience changed. And once that happens, no amount of rebranding can bring back what's already been spent. The first mistake wasn't leaving the royal family. It was misunderstanding what actually made her influential in the first place. Meghan didn't just walk away from tradition. She walked away from a system that quietly protected her credibility. Inside the monarchy, every word carried weight because it came wrapped in centuries of restraint. Silence added power. Rarity added value. Outside that system, the rules flipped. In Hollywood and media culture, visibility is currency, but overexposure is poison. And Meghan's image became everywhere, all the time, saying the same things, framed in slightly different ways. Interviews, documentaries, podcasts, speeches. Each one promised revelation, but delivered repetition. When audiences feel like they already know the ending, they stop listening. Another reason her image stalled is control. Meghan didn't just want to tell her story. She wanted to control how it was received. In theory, that sounds reasonable. In practice, it kills authenticity. Powerful public figures allow space for interpretation. They don't correct every narrative. They don't respond to every criticism. They don't polish every moment. Meghan did the opposite. Every appearance felt managed. Every phrase felt rehearsed. Every silence felt strategic instead of natural. And when people sense strategy, emotional connection disappears. Sympathy turns into skepticism. Support turns into fatigue. Then there's the credibility gap. Meghan positioned herself as an outsider fighting systems of power, but over time, her lifestyle, connections, and demands no longer matched that narrative. Private jets, luxury deals, elite partnerships, tightly controlled media access. None of these are wrong on their own, but they clash with the image of someone speaking from the margins. Audiences are extremely sensitive to contradiction. When words and lifestyle don't align, trust erodes quietly. Not angrily, not loudly, just enough that people stop caring. The media response is another clue. Criticism didn't escalate because Meghan became more controversial. It escalated because the story stopped offering anything new. Media thrives on movement, growth, transformation. Meghan's narrative froze in time, still centered on grievance, still rooted in the same emotional beats. Meanwhile, the world moved on. New conflicts, new voices, new cultural conversations. When a public figure doesn't evolve with the moment, relevance fades no matter how famous they are. But perhaps the most damaging factor is this: Meghan's image depends on being believed, not admired, not envied, believed, and belief is fragile. Once audiences feel manipulated, even slightly, rebuilding becomes almost impossible. You can change clothes, you can change projects, you can change platforms, but you can't force belief back into existence. It has to return naturally. And right now, the conditions for that simply don't exist. What makes this situation more difficult is that silence won't save her either. Speaking reinforces fatigue. Silence creates suspicion. That's the trap Meghan is in. Every move feels wrong because the foundation underneath it is unstable. Image repair usually works when a figure steps back, allows distance, lets the noise settle, and returns with something genuinely different. Meghan never fully stepped away. She stayed present, visible, vocal, and controlled. And in doing so, she left herself no room to reset. This isn't about failure. It's about timing, perception, and the unforgiving nature of modern celebrity culture. Meghan didn't lose relevance overnight. She spent it slowly. And unlike money or influence, once public trust is exhausted, it doesn't regenerate on command. And that's why rebuilding her image isn't just difficult. It may be structurally impossible without a complete disappearance first. What makes Meghan Markle's situation even more complex is not the criticism itself, but who is no longer speaking for her. In Hollywood, silence is never neutral. When powerful people stop mentioning your name, stop inviting you into rooms, stop casually attaching themselves to your projects, it's not because they're afraid. It's because they've already made a calculation. And that calculation usually sounds like this: the risk outweighs the reward. For years, Meghan benefited from proximity. Proximity to royalty, to legacy, to an institution that carried built-in authority. Once that proximity disappeared, the spotlight didn't go away, but the protection did. And Hollywood, above all industries, is allergic to unpredictability. This is where the PR problem truly collapses. Meghan has had top-tier publicists, crisis managers, image consultants, some of the best in the business. Yet none of them have been able to reverse the trend. That's because this isn't a messaging problem. It's a credibility environment problem. Publicists can amplify, soften, redirect, but they cannot manufacture trust once an audience has emotionally checked out. Every attempt to explain Meghan's situation only reinforces the idea that there is something that still needs explaining. And powerful figures don't explain themselves. They let time, consistency, and restraint do the work. Meghan never gave the public that breathing space. Another critical issue is narrative ownership. Meghan's story has been framed almost entirely through opposition. Against the palace, against the press, against critics, against misinformation. Opposition-based narratives are powerful in short bursts, but they are unsustainable long-term. Eventually, the audience asks a simple question: what are you building? Not what are you fighting? And when the answer isn't clear, attention drifts. Successful reinventions usually involve a pivot toward creation. New art, new ideas, new impact. Meghan's post-royal projects, however, often circled back to the same emotional territory: trauma, grievance, correction. The past remained the center of gravity. Without a future-facing identity, the image stagnated. Then there's the issue of over-curation. Meghan's public presence often feels too polished, too intentional, too symmetrical. Every photo, every quote, every appearance seems designed to signal meaning. But modern audiences connect more deeply with imperfection than with performance. The irony is that by trying so hard to control the narrative, Meghan stripped it of spontaneity. Nothing feels accidental. Nothing feels organic. And when nothing feels organic, nothing feels relatable. Authenticity cannot be staged, and the harder you try, the more obvious the staging becomes. Hollywood insiders understand this instinctively. That's why so many elite figures maintain distance. They don't publicly criticize Meghan. They don't defend her either. They simply step aside. In elite circles, neutrality is often a verdict. It means we're watching, but we're not investing. Because image repair requires allies willing to vouch for you without being asked. Meghan's problem is not that people oppose her. It's that fewer people are willing to stand beside her without conditions. Another uncomfortable truth is that Meghan's image became too dependent on validation. Awards, recognition, lists, covers, interviews. When those slowed down or stopped, the absence became noticeable. Truly resilient public figures are not defined by constant affirmation. They remain influential even when ignored. Meghan's brand, however, was built on being acknowledged. When institutions like major fashion houses, cultural publications, and entertainment power centers stopped centering her, the loss felt louder than any criticism ever could. And here's the part most people miss. Rebuilding an image requires humility, not defensiveness. It requires accepting that the audience may no longer see you the way you want to be seen. Meghan has never publicly allowed for that possibility. Every setback has been framed as misunderstanding, bias, or unfairness. Sometimes those things are real. But when they become the default explanation, growth becomes impossible. Because growth begins with asking, what did I misread? Not who wronged me. There is also a timing issue that cannot be ignored. Meghan entered the public consciousness during a moment of cultural reckoning. Her story aligned perfectly with broader conversations about race power and institutional change. But cultural moments evolve. What resonates in one phase does not automatically carry into the next. When a figure remains anchored to a past moment while the cultural conversation moves forward, relevance fades quietly. Meghan didn't lose the moment because she was wrong. She lost it because she stayed there too long. So what would it actually take to rebuild her image? Not another interview, not another documentary, not another controlled rollout. It would require disappearance, real absence, no statements, no corrections, no branding, no positioning. Time long enough for fatigue to clear and curiosity to return. Only then could a genuinely new chapter emerge. But that kind of restraint is incredibly difficult for someone whose public identity has been built on visibility and voice.